you're going to hear about more of this in a second. So any questions or further questions based upon the questions that were connected to all the programs you asked last week? And that email. Okay, moving along. Along the same lines, I was curious about ECS grant funding, and Donna did a 5-year summary for me. And our ECS funding is the grant funding that comes into the town. A portion is for schools, a portion is for other things. ECS is down over the last 5 years. It's down 7.5%, which I think is important for people to know that more town dollars are. You're asking for more town dollars, basically, from your taxpayers.
I'm sorry, how many percent is lower?
It is 7.5% lower, and I did not include the teacher retirement.
Over how
So,
many years?
5 years.
So over 5 years, 7%, 7.5% total.
Yeah, it went from 46.4% of our, and I'm just looking at the BOE budget, K-8, pre-K-8, and in 2018, without the teacher retirement, it was 38.9.
I'm sorry, what does that figure pertain to?
So that is the money that comes in from the state, and that, and Donna, what other, besides education, some of them, it's the revenue that comes in, it's expected revenue, and a portion of that revenue is utilized to offset the school budget. So, you know,
Right.
in
Cost
2018,
sharing.
correct. Correct.
Thanks. So just to clarify, what you're saying is that the percentage of our budget that ECS contributes towards is down 7.5 percentage points. It's not down 7.5%. It's down.
Correct.
Okay.
It's the amount that's correct, yes.
Okay.
Is that amount guaranteed?
From the last 5 years.
Over the 5-year period, if you compare 5 years
What's
from
that?
now.
What's the-
It wasn't last year, they stopped it and then they.
And
Right.
there's actually legislation about that this year that's proposed to say the governor may not do that. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
But there's at least 5 or 6 different bills that all say roughly the same thing.
Yes,
So there's a
yes.
big push for it.
And we'll know in a couple weeks when his budget comes out if there are any changes.
But it could go down because of the,
We don't know yet.
well, state is so much in debt now.
We've heard that, we just don't
The
know.
money may not be available.
That's always the case, that the state sets its budget after we set our budget. And so while we need to consider the fact that, you know, state budget isn't flush with cash, there's no way of knowing the impact of the overall state economy on specific education allocations. There's no way to know.
You know,
It's
when they
even less so
when they
this year.
allocated it, it was different for every state. The big cities apparently got most of it. They were cut back, but
Is,
some towns were
yeah.
Simsbury and Avon.
Right, but because that was a different governor and a different legislature,
legislature.
it's really impossible to predict whether we will get hit hard or just get a haircut. You know, there's no way to predict what will be. So if anything, I'm saying there's a lot of uncertainty of what that number could be.
The executive director of CAPS, who's the superintendent, kind of director of all the superintendents for the state, she presented to us yesterday, and they are really struggling to find a fair formula because there are towns that have said, we don't need your money at all, and they still get money. Some of the, and we're talking millions. So they're trying to find a formula, but it's very challenging to do.
Yeah,
So.
sure is.
Now there's all of that different legislation proposed, bills proposing regionalization.
Yep.
And we heard that.
Yep.
So those bills are not going anywhere. There will be no forced regionalization of schools.
No, not for us, I'm
No,
talking about.
but
they've
that's
been
what
talked
the
about.
stories have been in the paper, have been
Yeah.
quite, I think, overly dramatic in order to make a point and sell papers and get people up in arms. I also think that the original bill was very poorly written,
Well,
and
there are
that was
two
not the
bills.
intention.
One is the extreme of 40,000 district, the other one's only 2,000.
Right, but
Which would
both,
affect
in
us.
both cases, neither of them will go anywhere this session. So they're
Budget
not-
related.
yeah.
Budget related, some of that intent, and I was sharing this with Don, was IEP Direct is a program we utilize. It's not called IEP Direct now, it's called, it's at the tip of my tongue, I can't, they changed names, company. It's how we maintain all of our individualized education plans electronically. Almost everybody in the state uses the same program, and so one of the things was, well, maybe the state can negotiate a good deal for all of us. We would probably save a couple $100. Everybody in the state pretty much uses PowerSchool, our student operating system. Maybe they can negotiate that. That was some of the conversation about regionalization that went to the extreme of, you all need to build it, move into school together. So it was regional efforts. Some of it was about that too, and that's what she shared, because she's the chair of the committee, of the Education Policy Committee, by the way, which did not have a single superintendent on it. So,
I know it's a new governor, but speaking about, the education cost sharing money, last year we were, we took a steer choices in this town to sort of protect money because we feared that there would be some huge sea change. That didn't end up happening last year. So I'm not saying that could be the same this year, but I just, that is what happened as recently as last year. So there's a possibility it could
I will say
be sane.
The doomsday that has been projected and said over and over and over hasn't happened yet. So, last thing I wanted to make sure you saw, we received an email from a parent, Sandra Hughes, who was here last meeting. Her daughter, who they just moved to town, wrote a beautiful one-page letter to you all. And it was basically in favor of, when she came from Holland, of the makerspace and how critical that was. And she went on to talk about one of the projects that she's working on. And I think in talking to her about this, that is the thing at Hall School that caught her. Walking through the door, new student, makerspace, this is the space for me. So just thought it was important you saw it. It went to your emails. So lots of information that's connecting to money. So program-wise, I just want to fly through, just as a quick snapshot again. If you have any, I'll go questions program by program, and then what I'll do is I'll go through the budget adjustment options that I shared out with you in the email. So program 1, center school, again, you're seeing the adjustment. The changes are really in salaries there. The offsets, the biggest thing there are the offsets. It is in my proposed budget. It is under where it was last year by about $23,000. And remember, every dollar of the Title I is applied. There was no Title II because it moved to another account, and we applied some of the REAP grant money. Any other questions? Anything you want me to go through or review on program 1? Program 2 is Hall School. And so, again, you're looking at, you have a slight decrease in salaries and significant in my proposed budget decrease in educational supplies. You only see the grant offset in this for REAP, again, which is the Rural Education Grant, and that's in that section of technology with $6,800. If you look at building maintenance, it's down $4,000. So this is down almost $60,000. Questions about program 2? Things that we've gone through, more information. Program 3, you remember now has the retirement built into it in the page that you have updated. So that would not apply to the 6.99, and I'll restate that again in a moment because we didn't know about that retirement when I started the 6.99. So when I get to those options, I'll walk through that. Again, this is what provides all the services for students with special education needs. We have some grant money that's applied. The majority of the items that here are dictated by IEPs. It's to meet the needs of students, and those are legal requirements. When you look at the grant offsets that are here, the excess cost, remember that $10,000 is 4.5 times our per pupil expenditure. When it gets over that, we get a reimbursement back. We're expecting potentially $10,000 to be reimbursed. That's down from last year. It's simply down, or this year I should say. It's simply down because we don't expect the students to meet that 4.5 times. There is proposed legislation around this to make it 3 times the per pupil expenditure. Again, this is just proposed language. I can't see that it's going to go anywhere because it would cost the state more money. The other grants that are in there, IDEA, you can see there it's around staffing, and the purchase service there is that's the $6,000 is for IEP Direct, is the program that I was just talking about that could be negotiated with the state. You see this is special ed has an increase, and it is quarter of your budget. Questions about program 3? Moving along. Transportation, again, the majority of this is contractual. This is, you have a portion of secretary in here. The bus contract increases in there, you can see everything else is flat. And it's basically just to transport our students to events that they have. And it's not everything. This does not have field trips built in. But sporting events, any specific things we do for orientation, things like that. Herb, you had asked about how often they rotate buses, and it is, I'm sorry, I don't have the exact number, but it is written in the contract, and I believe it's every 6 years. They
Rotated.
Yeah, there's a rotate. It's written directly into our contract. Anything else for program 4? Program 5, health services. Again, this is just to have our 2 nurses, one in each school. You really need to keep the supplies flat in this account. It's based upon 6.99. Pretty straightforward program. Any questions about health services? Program 6, curriculum and staff development. This is where we're using our money to provide our 3 priorities. This is one of them, was professional development to allow our teachers the best training that we can afford to provide the best instruction for our students. And so this is where that money is coming from. It also includes stipends for teachers for leadership positions such as team leader stipends. The outside conferences is in here. But this is the main purpose of this here is to basically build capacity amongst our teachers and do it in a fiscally responsible manner. Questions about curriculum and staff development? I wanted to give you a chance, no questions. Maybe I didn't need to do this. All right.
No, it's helpful to refresh ourselves in 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's why I figured. Program 7, utilities. This is contractual. We actually met today as our what is our committee called? Is there a committee name?
That meeting?
Yes.
No.
The utility committee?
We just basically review the usage committee.
Those in charge of.
Yeah. So it was basically reviewed what has been used at the senior center, the town office building, this room,
Public Works garage.
the public works garage, the schools, and so we look to see are there any bubbles, and can we explain that bubble? If we can't, and we've basically established now a plan moving forward that we'll get a monthly report based upon our usage, and if there's something that, wow, a toilet's running and no one has noticed it and it's running constantly, we'll see that in water, and we can identify what building, figure it out and stop it so we can maintain our bills. I'm still waiting on a proposal too from, about solar, just as doing some, just to see, so. Any questions about program 7? Program 8, operations and maintenance. This is to maintain our schools. You see that you have the custodians in here, the maintenance custodians in here. You have a piece of a secretary who does all the POs. You have our property insurance, KERMA, and KERMA again was the one that when we had the pipe freeze last year, was that last year? Wow, seems like it was forever ago. Hall School, that they were the ones that took care of it all and you know, put in the claim for us. So remember that I took MCOR out of this line and I moved it into the schools. You see the custodial supplies are down 4% in this, and total expenditures are down 16,000. That offset that has been prepaid in the past was prepaid, and that was an MCOR prepayment for their preventative maintenance program. Questions about operations and maintenance program 8? Yeah. Program 9,
Nope, wait.
yes.
I'm wondering about putting MCOR back here, so it takes it away from the schools, because that seems to be where our deficit lies. I don't know if there's any advantage to it or not, but at least we're, it takes money that we're spending in the schools.
But it doesn't change our bottom line
It doesn't,
either way.
yeah.
No, and part of the reason we asked her to move it over was because we wanted to see if
What it
equal amounts
costs
were
to run a
spending.
school.
Yeah, so for example, part of it was, are we spending, because Hall is so big, are we spending, 2/3 of that MCOR money at Hall, or 90% of that money at Hall? So we were asking for the kind of distribution.
Yep.
So even if it was here, I would still want to know what that distribution
I
was.
actually struggled with that decision too, because this, and this is of all the programs, when Jackie laid these programs out, I really appreciate how she's done it to set it up. And this was one area for me when I look at the cost to run center school and the cost to run Hall School. This is the one particular program for me that you probably could split up and move the custodians back into the buildings. You could move KERMA into a district, but either way, it doesn't change the budget
No, the
number.
bottom line
It's
is
just trying to
yeah.
show you operations and maintenance, what it takes.
Right.
But you're saying having one of the lines separated and the other one's not,
Well, it
doesn't make
just,
as much
it's,
sense.
I feel for the schools, because they're the ones that are getting everything taken away to try to balance the budget. The supplies are disappearing, and all of that's disappearing to balance budget. If we move the MCOR back here, but
I
that
didn't-
doesn't make any
I
difference.
didn't do it by
No,
program.
okay.
I went line by line.
Yeah,
And so this program got hit too.
yeah.
I mean, that's, they're,
And it's
they're,
a good program.
Yeah,
It serves
I mean,
us well.
it
but,
does. I mean, it came up last night about, in CIP, that, a director of facilities for the entire town, or something that is an ongoing building committee, someone that's constantly evaluating what we have. It's kind of like our MCOR book, but I see it as a bigger picture, and Erica and I have talked about this, and not just school-based, because our school folks do a good job, but, when I think about what we've gotten out of MCOR and the knowledge that we've gotten out of MCOR, and our ability to identify projects that need to be completed, that's where we want to be. I'm honestly trying to get custom computers right now to follow the MCOR model and present us with a book to say, we had a switch fail at Hall School, which knocked out wireless connectivity to a boatload of classrooms. And she's nodding her head over there. Thankfully, that switch is under warranty and where it's going to get replaced pretty quickly. But we need to be able to identify how old are our servers? What would it cost to replace them? Do you need to replace them? What are all of our subscriptions for? And Donna and Brenda and I have been working on this, and it's all related to being able to pinpoint a good budget and constantly know. It's kind of like the CIP process, but it might not be that much. But we don't have that, and I'm trying to get customers to do that same thing.
Okay, thank you.
System-wide support is a host of, a bunch of things. So our IT is in here, I'm in here, the school tuition's in here, you have, you know, some of the smaller things that kind of don't float anything, kind of go into this particular line. But the only thing that was new, and again, I think that's the only thing that's new in the budget, is public safety officers was, $3,000 was put in here for public safety officers for major events. And again, that's something I think that is critical, and it came out of the our safety committee. Any questions about program 9?
Well, my question, which program do we have CAVE?
CAVE is in, no, it's in this one. It's in program 9. CAVE is in this program.
In program
Yes,
9?
district-wide, system-wide support. It's in page 2.
Oh, okay,
Go
sorry,
back to it.
back page. Flip over, it's in the
Do
second
we
half.
have
of the
money in
program.
here for security, or is that
The majority of our security items are,
the
some,
public safety?
that's for the public safety officers. The majority of our safety projects right now are in CIP.
Yeah, okay.
And we've done, I mean, doors, you know, improving our doors, putting the buzzers in, cameras are, you just approved the bid for the cameras for center school, the cameras for hall school are out, so there's a lot of things that are in, but they're in CIP. I would say some of the smaller things, if it's security related, comes out of maintenance.
Do we have
But it's not
radio
much.
contact between buses and hall school?
It's kind of around, okay, so I'm gonna share,
And also center, I think we have it at center, but do we have it? with
Yeah.
hall?
I just want to address this because this is the communication point here I'm struggling with. I was notified by the Board of Finance Chair, is Jim the Board of Finance Chair?
Yes.
About a bus communication problem, where there was a problem on the bus. And for whatever reason, the bus driver could not get a hold of Hall School. It's in our contract that M&J is required to have bus radios. They have a bus radio on every bus. We have receivers at center school and Hall School, they both have them. It's the first time I've been aware that they couldn't contact Hall School. There are known dead spots in this town for emergency personnel, for public works, and for our buses. And it's really because of the hills. You know, you go down Moose Meadow when you're trying to get to the bus lot that's over at corner 195 and 32, and it doesn't go anywhere. And
But if they
basically,
can't get hall school, do they have a backup plan of some kind, or?
the bus drivers are supposed to pull over and use their cell phones. And that's what M&J has in their contract. To try and remedy this, because now I know about it, I've talked to the bus coordinator, she's the director, dispatcher, sorry. She is going to have, for Hall and Center, they're going to test their radios at where they believe to be dead spots so they can identify, so a driver knows that. Hall School has their radios on, Center School has their radios on. One of the things, once we do this test, which I talked to her, I believe, what is today? I talked to her on Monday. That's how I feel. I talked to her on Monday, is once we do this and we identify where the dead spots are, it's gonna be critical for M&J to be able to respond to it. One of the issues I have right now with the communication piece is that we've been merged with other towns. And so, as a principal, I've lived this. We had an issue on a bus, not a major issue, but you know, a parent is not home for an elementary student to be dropped off. And we're trying to communicate with the bus driver, and there's other chatter going on that we're impacted, we're on the same frequency. I have a problem with that, because we're paying M&J for radio service, and it should be for WIllington. So there's a CIP project out right now for Public Works that we're doing some research on to see if there's a way that we can actually piggyback onto something so that we have our own repeater or own system. I've been told Yukon has a tower that you can be on the Rhode Island border and you can communicate with wherever you want. So if we can connect to that,
But that there still may be some dead spots in town, no matter what we're on,
right,
with the information we're getting back.
yeah, and so it is an issue. But there is a system in place. And there was a question about our communication to bus drivers. It's the first time I've heard it, and so now it's been addressed with the bus driver, it's been addressed with a coordinator, and it's been addressed with the school, so we'll see where it goes. But yes, we absolutely have communication with our bus drivers.
So can I ask you a question now about
Absolutely.
Kate?
Kate,
So,
yes.
from this list, it's not clear for me at least, how much do we pay for Cape's membership, which I think we need to have, and how much do we pay for all kinds of conferences, like, and the other, I see, Conference Board of Education. So, and what else do we spend for Cape, except conferences of Board of Education?
So the CABE dues are not for the conference. It allows you to get a discounted rate at a
Yeah,
conference,
yeah.
but that's just our dues. So the two associations there, CASBO is Donna's group, which also includes somebody else, Amanda. And I know just because she's got it open to the page, she can probably tell you exactly what CABE costs.
Oh, yeah, I am trying to find that out.
I'm gonna say 3.
Yeah, I think it is 3 something.
I think it's around 3,000 is our dues.
And as I understand, we do need to have Cape membership, which we need it for all kinds of advising purposes. But the Conference Board of Education, so that's 2,000 including, that's after the discounts Cape gives us. So
Yeah, and
that's-
that conference could be to CABE, it could be to another association, it could be to an EastCon event. It's not set for just CABE.
One year, a number of years ago, one of the national boards of ed conferences was in Boston. So it allowed us to go to Boston because we didn't have to stay overnight, unlike any of the other national conferences that happen. So depends on who's where. You know, some years we might choose to go if there was somebody national around.
What this provides the board with, it's like the superintendent. I mean, he should have the opportunity to go to conferences and to meetings of other superintendents. And we should pay for that particular conference or whatever he's going to. And that's for professional development. We talk a lot about professional development for staff, and we provide it for staff. It also applies to the superintendent, and I'm encouraged that we have that in there for him, because some of our past superintendents really did not go to too many conferences, okay? And the board the same way. We have new members on the board, and a lot of board members go to these different workshops and conferences that CABE provides, and it's part of professional development.
Any other questions about Program 9? Program 10 is fringe benefits subs. We're still waiting for more information on insurance. It's out. We're waiting to see it, where it's going to come in. This is a big chunk. You see that we're
How much are
putting.
we paying our subs now? Are we competitive with other towns?
We are competitive for our region. We're paying retired teachers $100 a day, and teacher subs are $85, and para subs are $75,
Oh, 71.
$71. And we're comparable. If you go to a tech school, you can make $150. That's the state.
That's right.
Yes, I agree.
I know that.
Yeah. So, I think, and teachers are in the room, so we'll see what the response is when I say this. I think this is the best year we've had for subs in a long time. We have more subs now than we've had. We've been, it's been hard, we've had to cancel some professional development in-house because we've had some people sick. But we started advertising on Indeed, and I think that was Mr. Craig's idea. And maybe you take credit for that, I don't know if that was you or not.
I have so many ideas.
There you go. And we've gotten some new subs in, and our subs like Willington. Some of them are just working in Willington now, just because they like us.
How are the
And-
qualifications? They need a
You need a bachelor's,
bachelor's degree.
or you need a waiver for that we provide. We haven't provided a waiver for anyone,
Yeah.
but you need a bachelor's. And our subs are doing a good job. Any questions about anything that's in the Fringe benefits?
Now, on the insurance end of it, that has gone up, is that what you told us?
Yeah, so we are planning on a 14.5%.
14%.
Yeah, that's what we're planning on. Again, we got some information the other day, and that's been updated, but it's basically, and I would share it, but it's only really what I see as the internal audit by our broker. And so, what they think we should be at, and they said 14.5 could be an accurate number within a percent or two. There could be some significant changes to this. But it's not gonna come from the broker. It's gonna come from a Kinetic Air. They're gonna be the ones that are gonna say the amount.
And we typically don't get that information for a while.
A while.
So that's not something we're expecting any day.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Now, the tuition figure for reimbursement,
Mm-hmm.
that's for the 6-year certificate?
It's contractual in the teacher's contract.
That's in the contract.
Yes, if someone says they want to, if they're going to be going for a 6-year degree or higher, and they are an approved program,
Mhm.
they get a certain amount of money.
And we're pretty sure there are some that are going.
We send out a survey, and they identify that in the survey. They can identify if they're going to retire, they can identify if they're going to be changing their benefits, they can identify if they're going to be requesting tuition reimbursement. So it's, and the survey data is critical for building the budget, how we get our information.
And we should be clear that this is only a partial reimbursement. We don't
Oh,
pay
yeah.
for the full cost of the tuition. It's something that contributes towards what the tuition
We're not
costs.
providing with meals and
Yeah, it's not a free ride to go
No,
on more
it's free,
education.
no.
It's a
Things
piece
like
of it. It's a piece of help. No.
is that enough though?
We budgeted exactly based upon the number of people that requested it. So I'm going to tell you that I believe it's 5.
Is that for each course they take?
No, it's $800 per person,
Per
and there are
year?
5 people that requested it.
And that's all we're giving them, $800?
You want to increase that, Herb?
Some districts don't get it.
It's
Just saying.
Listen, we can't be going on this.
No.
I think it's admirable they're doing this. I don't think it should be in the contract, but that's something else. In other words,
You're also not
they're
going to buy the
required,
monster
when we hire
dinners
them,
every
we
night.
hire them at a bachelor's, they're required to get a master's. There's nothing in the state law that says that they have to have a 6-year. They're just doing this, and out of the kindness of our heart, we're appropriating make a legal 6-year certificate, which is good.
It does sound like it might help some with recruiting, though, if there are some schools that they don't get that at all, right?
Yeah, it's a very, very small benefit. And again, it's an approved program, and it's, they come back and they share their information, they're gaining knowledge, and they're building their own cohort. Some of them are going into special education, some of them are doing ed leadership. It depends on what they're doing. I will tell you that in past, superintendents have applied, depending on what the program is. They have contractual professional development money too. That's professional development that could be applied to. It's not a lot of money, but it's something that makes sense. It's an appropriate program.
Well, I think it's great we have that in there.
And this is related to education and educational practice. We're not paying for them to go take woodworking class.
That is correct.
Okay.
Approved program. Okay, so.
Nothing bad about woodworking classes, I fully support
Could
the
be,
crafts.
it could be in the makerspace.
Yeah, be careful. Okay, so tax accounting.
That could be in math.
Oh, okay, forget it.
So when you approve this, if they're a, say, a K-3 certification, and if they take a course, can they go for additional certification? Would you approve something like that?
Sure.
Out of their particular.
Sure, if it's for professional growth and it's something that, you know, the district is gonna reap the benefits of it, absolutely. The cost of the certification's on them, if they want to apply for something. But, you know, just, there's some unique certifications out there, and special ed's a shortage area. If I were a teacher right now, I didn't have a special education background, I would be doing my master's in that, or 6th year in that, to try and get that background, because it makes you more marketable.
Mhm.
And we have several people that are crossing doors that have multiple certifications. Okay, last thing before I get into the budget adjustments, I'm going to throw, because I think it's important, and I've tossed this back and forth, and I met with the area superintendents a couple weeks back, I think I told you this, that one of the things that's important is we talking about vision, that I haven't really shared with you, that, or the administrators, there are a load of things that are not in this budget that I think you need to know are out there, that are on my brain. We can't pay for them right now, but they're creative ways to, that, you know, if I was gonna add things, or without thinking about money and being fiscally responsible, there are things that I would absolutely add to this district. And I wanna share some of those things so you get a sense that they're real. It's, you know, I could give you a 20% increased budget. I didn't do that. But I want to give you a sense of just quick list. HMS could use a math interventionist. It's been stated. I think to be competitive with other districts, we could offer a second language. Years ago, you had a technology integration specialist. Probably could be somewhat considered to be into the library media specialist position, could be somewhat linked to the makerspace right now. But there is so much technology that teachers need support with because it moves so fast. When we get to talking about Portrait of Graduate, I'm going to show you a slide of how fast we now gain information and how much faster it is in the past. The 4 that you don't see in this budget, is I was talking about before, is the technology improvements. We have a lot of good technology, but our smart boards are aging. You know, we have new laptops on lease for teachers. But to really be cutting edge, we were cutting edge when we had smart boards. Right now, I would say we're the middle of the pack with technology. We have a lot of good technology, but going back to our servers and our switches and making sure everything's operable. And so when I walk down the hallway, it's, you know, hall school, I don't have Bridget O'Connor come up to me and say, you know, talking to a student in the hallway, so their Chromebook can reconnect. And the last thing on here is a biggie. And this might be something that I'm going to push for in the future. And some of you have asked about my ability, and this is not a shot at me, I don't think, to lead the district in discussions about where do we go from here as far as building a school, renovating a school, or maintaining. And this last position is adding as a position is kind of a donor development dream, grant development, marketing director, 3 hats in one. The ability for someone to pay for themselves through grants. In a small town, we need a director of development. And, you know, I don't know that Erica wears a lot of hats, I wear a lot of hats. If we could hire somebody in this town that works between the Board of Education and the town, who someone could bring in grants to pay for their salary and then some, we would see the benefit of that. And so just something that I think is, you know, kind of, I see it as a multi-faceted position, but I call it donor development, director of development. So I wanted to give you a snapshot that those are some things that I would love to see, but I fully understand, our constraints. So knowing our constraints, you gave me some feedback based upon my proposed budget of 2.93%. And I pulled together and for those of you that want to know, there's copies of this over there, of what we're about to talk about. I pulled together 5 options for you. And I tried to simplify this to give you a sense of what the increase would be. Some of you wanted to add positions back, some of you had different feelings. And so you know what 2.93% looks like because that's the budget you have in front of you. The five options you have in front of you, I will walk through. Option A, the 6.99, I had to leave alone because that I walked you through that in my proposal to you of what 699 looked like, and I didn't want to change that, even though that doesn't reflect retirements that we know about now. I left it alone. Okay, so it maintains current positions. It maintains our current supplies. There are no retirement savings known. There's a budget increase of $579,000. That's the 6.99%. Option B takes that, and now we know I've reduced supplies by 1%. There's a couple that are flat, that need to be flat, but the majority of supplies are decreased by 1%. We applied the REAP grant money. We increased Title I grant money that was applied. We applied excess cost. We reduced professional development and curriculum leadership. And now we have retirement savings. We now know about the principal secretary and custodian for this option. And we moved the insurance savings we proposed at the beginning. We went from 20%, and now it's at 14.5% in this option. So that brought it down to 6.09. Again, that is in your budget book. Now I'm going to give you some new examples based upon what you were asking questions about, or your feedback. Option C, I just titled it Add Positions. Reinstate library media specialist, as well as the school-wide enrichment positions. That would be an increase back to the budget of $192,000. You would reinstate supplies to flat or minus 1%. Option C would put the library books back in. It would put curriculum leadership to $10,000 and professional development to $5,000 for an increase of $29,416. And now you see the retirement savings in here for the special education teacher that we just learned about. So the option increase for option C, you'd be adding $221,000 back to the budget, and your budget total percent increase would be 5.60.
So that's to the budget you presented us, which was 2.9?
3, correct. 2.93, correct.
Does it presume the grants and
Yes.
from
All
option B?
of
Okay.
option, yes.
So it's
So
building
those-
on that, yeah.
So now it has, the REAP is still in there, titles, excess cost is in there. The only adjustment really is the professional development went back up and the curriculum leadership went back up. And those 2 retirement savings are still part of it. And the insurance is still there as well. Yes.
The cuts to the supplies in the budget you presented us with, could you average out what that percentage was? Because I know there were some that were 16 and some that were,
Average, no.
no, okay.
I think what I'll tell you is Unified Arts got hit really hard. Some of them were up to, I think I said 70%, particularly in PE went from, $700 to $200. The language arts, math, science, social studies supplies were probably flat or minus 1. And so that's where, the principal's account supplies, those came down a percent.
Art was,
Art was significant, yeah, art was significant.
So
And that's where, if you look at that page, this budget process in your notebook, where I walked you through how I got from 699 down to 609, I thought it really gave you a sense of at what point did I totally demolish supplies? It was after going from 6.09 to 569 is where your supplies really got hit hard. And I don't like doing it, but I was trying to come up with a reasonable way to maintain those three priorities that we have.
Right.
Clubs, professional development, small classes.
Okay, very good. And when you talk about now flat and 1% minus 1%, is that across the board?
Yes.
So everything's reinstated
Absolutely,
with minus 1% or flat?
Yes.
Okay.
So any of those, it was basically $30,000 in cuts that brought you to the 569 from, maybe it was 30,000. But it's, that number is, those items are back in there.
Okay, thank you.
Option D only adds back the library media specialist position. It adds back supplies again, flat to -1. It adds the library books back, curriculum leadership to 10,000, professional development to 5,000, and you still know the retirement savings that's in there. This option increase would be $143,826. This would be a 4.67% increase over the current budget. Option E is only add back the school-wide enrichment position. Again, you'd add the supplies back, library books, curriculum development would be, go back to 10 and 5. You'd have the retirement savings in there. This increase would be $107,000, and you would have a 4.23% budget. So I tried to give you a sense, just based upon your feedback. You want to know what would it look like if we added some of those supplies back in because they were hit hard? What would it look like if we added one position back in? What would it look like if we put two positions back in? So I tried to give you that sense of what it would look like. Really, option, if you want to call it F, would be 2.93%, would be what I gave you.
One question to you. How much would it be if we can come up with that number somehow? If we look at option E, for example, and we bring back the maker space position, but we do not reinstate supplies and library books, so we keep those 29,000 gone. So without those 29,416, and just by, I just want to know the number, so we would have what their budget increase is gonna be.
I believe about $88,000 is 1%. And so you are doing less than 0.5%. You would,
It's gonna be 3.75, 3.74 increase. If we just keep the maker space,
you'd probably be 3.8, I bet, around. Donna, what do you think?
Yes,
Probably close to 3.8.
yes.
3.8.
369, a third, yeah, you might be actually closer to 3.9. You'd be about 3.9. Because that 90,000, I'm just taking 90,000 is divided by 3. This 30,000 is that number, so if I take 1/3%, you're coming down to about 3.9%.
Okay, 3.9%.
Could you just one more time explain the differences between option B and option C?
Yes. Option A and option B, I basically gave you in my, it's a good question, I'm glad you asked that, because I struggled trying to make sure that I didn't change what I gave you in your packet. And that's really what option A and option B is the result of us working through the cuts. And you see that in your book. Really the change from option B to option C is now we have the savings of the special education teacher, and you have the addition of the positions back. So all of the savings that we now know are reflected in option C, even with the positions back.
Okay, so everything that's listed in B there is already ground into C,
Correct.
plus the special ed teacher?
Yes. Yeah, and I mean, you're really, to get from the 6.09 to 5.6, it's really about retirements. It's about the retirement of the special education teacher. That is the difference from that and for us budgeting to a master's step one?
Other
So-
questions?
Hopefully that's a snapshot and that will be helpful.
It's very helpful. Okay. So, assuming that, well, as we're moving through the agenda, that that's the review of the programs and the budget adjustment options, there's time now for us to discuss our individual thoughts. We are not going to be voting tonight on a particular budget. That's for our meeting next time, but we wanted to have an opportunity to state our feelings about the different cuts, and I wanted people to have an opportunity to have that discussion tonight, so that if you had a difference of opinion with any of your friends and wanted to convince them to think differently, we'd have this week for that conversation, but for everybody to have an opportunity to kind of say where they stand, what their feelings are with the different numbers and options we have before us. Anybody want to start?
I can start. Well, you'll know my position. I'm trying to keep interest of everybody living in this town. But obviously in this question we have to keep children's interest first. And by studying actually thank you so much for giving this information for the description of every position which is we're considering to cut. My position is that I think the librarian position is not a fair, does not have a fair pay for our town. We pay $114,000 for that position, over $114,410. For the position which has close relationships with children during the day, 2.5, 3 hours a day. I think that's a very high price for the amount of work for that particular position. That's my position, again, it's my personal position, well, position of group I represent on this board, but as for the second position, make a space position, I think we should try to keep it, and hopefully that the Board of Finance will find a way to save somewhere else and would allow us to keep that position, because as far as I know, that place is really touching children's development and develops their interest towards the school education, towards just other subjects, which could be boring, but they love the school because of that particular subject. So I would highly ask Board of Finance to try to find a way to save and keep that position. And my position about supplies and library books and leadership, well, I would say 50-50, I would love to keep it, but if it's a question from the Board of Finance, I would give it. I would give it. But I would really, my priority in my position, I would try to keep, as much as possible, to keep that maker space position, but to let the librarian position go. That's my thing. I also would like to tell you that that what touches me personally, we pay such a fraction of this price to librarians in our WIllington library. Fraction, they work for the minimum, they have minimum wages. Although they do a tremendous job for our town, tremendous. So many programs, so much work, so many books, constantly, they're very busy there. So I think it's very unfair to pay the minimum pay to our WIllington library, which serves the whole town and children, and to pay that amount of money for the position which handles only a fraction of books for the certain age, up to 8th grade. Maybe we do not need such a high professional for that particular level of books, up to 8th grade. You know, that's again my thinking, and that's my position.
Thank you, Linda. Okay, who's next? Kurt?
Well, I think of all the, I want to thank the superintendent for the information that he has provided us with, A through E, plus the F, which was the original budget that we received. And in his budget, the one that he has presented us with, we're retaining our programs and our staff, our teachers, and also special education. Although we are getting a little relief there through the retirement. Our budget has certain fixed costs. I haven't figured out the percentage, but it's probably about 70 to 75%. It's fixed costs for salaries, which we have no control of once the negotiations have been completed. Insurance, we have very little control over that, and that's a fixed cost. We have to pay that. Our contracts in the area for computers and utilities to maintain and so forth. So we have all of those fringe benefits and fixed items that you really can't play a role with at all. We have the discretionary funds, which we've been wrestling with. This is where a lot of the reductions have been made. And it's only, what, 25% of our overall budget. And we've been reduced in instructional supplies, but we haven't eliminated them. Maintenance supplies, the same thing. We've cut it, but we still have some money in that area. Library books have been eliminated almost. Professional development, we've reduced somewhat, but we're still maintaining it and providing it. And also money for curriculum leadership and things of that kind. So we have a fixed cost, which we can do nothing with, the discretionary, which we've been toying around with, and we have reduced. Transportation is a fixed cost too, and there's no change there. Utilities, it's the same thing. So again, it's the discretionary money that we've been wrestling with. We do have two major areas that we've talked about and are reducing: the library position and the system-wide enrichment program. And a little while ago at center school, we eliminated the librarian, reduced that particular job, and we have a para, I believe, in center school. And that just worked out fairly well. So if we did go with a para, we would be saving a considerable amount of money, which will keep us in the 3% range, which I'm sure the Board of Finance wants. The system-wide enrichment program and the information you provided was very interesting, and I mean, it's a very important program for WIllington. But in wrestling with this, I figured, is it better to, in order to maintain our budget, make it a budget that's going to pass, and so forth. Can we remove the enrichment program? And otherwise, if you want to, we maybe have to go into reducing staff. And that's the last thing I think we want to do, because once we start reducing staff, then your class size goes up. So that I would rather see us do something with a system-wide enrichment program rather than a staff member. So I appreciate all the letters that we received from the public, and some gave us their position, both pro and con on various parts of the budget. And the thing is, we have to provide a budget that, and we've been interacting with the superintendent, with the public. We're going to have to interact with Board of Finance, the citizens in town. This is going to be a town meeting, so we have to interact with them. We're going to go to a referendum with our budget, and it has to be a reasonable budget. It has to be an acceptable budget. It has to be a budget that is within our financial constraints. I mean, if we provide a budget of 6% or 5% or even 4%, that's just part of the overall budget, because the town also has money coming in, and we don't know how much that's going to increase or how much money they'll be asking for in those areas. So the budget that we have is 2.93 in that range, and that's under 3%, which in my opinion is a fairly reasonable figure. It's not, I'd like to come in with a zero. I'm sure everyone in town would, but because we have so many fixed costs and salaries, insurance, and fringe benefits and everything else, that I think that the budget that we were presented with initially is one that I may support.
Can I just,
Thank you, Herb. I'd like to have everybody have a chance to speak before
I
we
just
then
want
ask
to-
questions. Do you have something?
yeah, just correct, I think, a little bit.
We're not going to correct each other's information
Yeah.
because each of us has opinions about how this is.
Not about
And I-
opinion, it's just for public to hear, because Herb said
I'm
to
sorry,
cut,
what?
you said to cut the enrichment program, and we're not considering to cut the program. Just that specially, the program is still gonna be there, even if we'll cut the enrichment, the special school-wide enrichment position, the program is still gonna be there, make a space. It's just gonna be distributed, yes?
I think
I
there's
don't
some
know.
question as to
No.
whether or not the program would look anything like the current program enough that you could call it not eliminated.
Okay.
Eliminated.
People take people
Yeah.
out and
Yeah.
they just should be able to work. I mean,
No,
it doesn't
Yeah,
work that
yeah,
way.
so that's
Ah,
debatable,
okay.
that's
Ah,
not.
okay. So,
Yeah.
thank you, I just
Okay.
wanted to understand, okay.
I was going to mention something about that, but
Yes,
what would happen probably, where the teachers have been exposed to this for a number of years, it's ingrained, they've seen it in operation, and they would incorporate it into the program somehow. The ones that they can handle themselves. But it does mean added
okay,
Work.
thank you. Sorry, I just.
and planning,
Yeah.
so forth for them.
Okay, I'd like to make sure everybody has a chance to speak and that we're not here
Thank you,
until
sorry.
midnight. Because obviously we all have strong opinions about this and we could talk for a long time. But who wants to go next?
I'll go. Ed, you know, you were starting to talk about the savings on those two positions, and it's about 100, almost 200,000. That's the amount alone of the health insurance going up. And, you know, I see a really sharp decline if we're going to have to make up for health insurance increases by cutting positions. There's just something about it that really bothers me, especially when we've heard some things about how popular the Makerspace program is, especially with kids who are having a little trouble connecting with school, period. And I think even for the kids who love school, it's part of their day that's maybe gives them, maybe it's the pizzazzier part of their day in many cases. The librarian, I feel like one of the things that that's, we might have a little bit of a classic view of what a library media specialist is from the olden days maybe, instead of, I know this is what I thought before I started thinking about it more. Now, we're sort of moved away a little bit from the classic textbook, and we're feeding more into the individual student's interest to help them catch fire. And I really think that does need a specialist. I'm not sure a classroom teacher can do that for every child in the class. I think that they do a lot of that too. But I like the idea of someone who is looking at new literature, looking at books that are going to jazz someone who is not awake yet intellectually in their classroom day, and have an opportunity there. And that's why I see those positions as crucial. So I also feel like the amounts of supplies are not extravagant. And I just can't imagine an art class or a PE class without some underpinning. So those things are really crucial to me. I'm kind of a centrist on this array. I'm thinking option C shows a real regard for the overall bottom line that we have to face, but I think it preserves the two positions, it preserves some of the supplies, as many as we can, and that's what I favor at this point. But I'm open to my colleagues' views.
I have to think about the two positions on, I might have to call you guys maybe. I wrote some notes, but it's not really totally clear in my mind. But I think what you said about swapping the cost of insurance for two people, and I'm talking position again. I kind of agree with you thinking about position. Although these are real people, but two positions, it is striking. You're right. We have no control over the health insurance costs. And this is a national issue. It's not a Willington issue. But to have our children suffer for it, it does seem pretty sad state of affairs. So, I have one more question about option C. I'm sorry, I was thinking through my head. The curriculum leadership and the professional development at 15,000. I thought we had talked about those, and we had you kind of said that it didn't seem to be a big cut, and I can't quite remember. Where was, that's in program 6? Is that where you would add it back?
Yes, so that, what I said was it was gonna be, we were gonna be at what I would say the minimum to provide support for.
So, the curriculum leadership. The curriculum leadership was, it had gone down to 9,100, is that what that was?
Yes.
Oh, it would only increase it by 1,000.
Correct, I'm not increasing it by 15,000, I'm bringing it back to 10, so it comes up,
And then the professional development.
would come up 2,500. Thank you, Professional Development Committee.
It will go up.
Right, so
So
the
it'd go
amount
from-
there is closer
So it's
to
not like I would-
$3,500.
It's not like I
It's
would
not a
add back
$15,000.
$15,000.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
then I,
There's, in this year's budget, there's 6,000, and the Professional Development Committee would be at 5,000, still it would be $1,000.
so that's really $3,500 that you would put back in.
That's correct.
All right, then.
Sorry if that wasn't clear.
All right, no, that's okay, I'm glad I asked. You did say 2, so I should have, okay. So in other words, I'm not sure I would feel comfortable presenting a budget to the Board of Finance without those two positions. Because of the constraints that we have with all the costs that are fixed. I mean, I totally agree with you.
Yeah,
I just don't feel like it's right for our kids to lose out in those two positions. I feel strongly, like you do, about the enrichment position, because I think that's where most schools are going, and we're going to be at a disadvantage if we don't offer something like that. So, and I think you need a person for that. So I know I'm a little still shaky. So as I said, I'll have more questions probably. I jotted down some notes, so I'll have a clearer picture next week.
Thank you.
I need to go with option C, and I think one reason is, having served on the board for a few years, then watching everything dwindling at the expense of the fixed prices. We've had to freeze the budget in January because we don't have money for supplies. So what's going to happen next year when we have even less money? So I think it costs $6.99 more to educate our children now than it did last year, and I think we need to be able to go to the board of finance and ask for at least some of that. And then maybe they can give some direction as to exactly how much they would want to see cut from that, and then maybe we could revisit. When we have some more direction from them that way. The other thing is, Phil mentioned one of his visions is having a math consultant at the middle school, and the enrichment person is sort of serving that position, serving in that role right now. And then also the library person is helping to build the library to go along with the Reader's Workshop, Writer's Workshop, which is the direction that we're going in language arts. So if we're really trying to build our curriculum, those are two key characters in both of those areas, I feel. And I also wondered, the curriculum and professional development, so that only saves $3,500? Okay. I was hoping maybe that would be a little more of a savings. All right.
Is that it?
So, yes, option C is for me.
I don't want to put you on the spot because you hardly had a chance to catch your breath. What we've been doing is looking at the different scenarios that we had, Mr. Stevens put some additional information to. And now is our chance to speak to which of those we felt most strongly aligned with. We're not going to vote tonight, but just to have a chance for us to state our case to our colleagues about where we stand. So would you feel ready to do that?
I can say some things.
Okay.
I missed some, and I will go back and review minutes from what I missed so that I can catch up, but I have some comments that I can say. From what I've heard, I agree about option C because I feel that we should not put our teachers at a disadvantage with supplies because we are asking them, there's a whole lot of demands on teachers, way more than there was in the past, even 25 years ago, what we are asking teachers to teach and taking away their supplies. And I'm talking all subjects, especially with new standards in many of the areas. Taking away supplies, we're putting pressure on them to use their own resources or be more creative than we already asked them to be because we already act on a limited budget as it is. So our teachers are very creative from what we saw when we walked through the buildings. So I really feel like supplies are very important and shouldn't be minimized the importance of them. And the two positions, one thing that strikes me first of all is to have one student come in and speak when many parents can't come and do that in front of us. Asking us, pleading with us why we should keep the position and have a fifth grader write a letter to the board that most adults wouldn't be willing to do or be able to do, asking for that position. Someone new to our town and how she was very impressed with the fact that, and surprised that we had a program like that in our building. I think that speaks volumes to me when you hear that from students. And looking at this list here of what the enrichment teacher and the library specialist do, if we are trying to take that and put it onto the responsibility of a para and asking our teachers to take on parts of this, you're going to lose something. The qualifications of a para are different. We might get a para who is fabulous, who has the education background, and paras are wonderful. They are full of, paras know more than some teachers do in practical skills, but not necessarily in the latest, what is, library media specialist and enrichment. I don't, that stuff takes training. And we have professionals, and I'm not talking about people, but, okay, I am talking about people here, but also just position-wise. They went to school to get a specialized degree. It wasn't a workshop for a weekend. It was an intensive program to learn what they are doing. So to now have a para come in, maybe they'll have a degree, maybe they'll have a degree in that, and they're choosing to work as a para, but maybe it's going to be a para with a lot less qualifications and our students are going to suffer for it. And many times positions work because you have a certified teacher who is acting as a para, and so they have those qualifications by choice. That doesn't always happen because we don't know who's going to apply for the job or who's going to be moved into that position. And I agree that taking two positions away to pay for something we have no control over, that is there were parents who wrote into us about the fact that these are fixed costs we don't have a choice about. They're going to go up again next year. When we move into deciding what to do about our schools, and we have possibly one school combined, and we don't have a library media specialist in the district, I think we're going to be sorry, because I've read research, and a parent has presented research to us about districts who have made that decision and regretted it later. And we know that in WIllington, historically, when a position leaves, it doesn't come back, because we're living without it, so that means we don't need it. And I don't have the document in front of me, but I know you had sent us, we had asked a question about money that has been given back to the town historically, and it's, I'm not really good with numbers.
1.3 million.
$1.3 million. We are in a position in our schools right now, because of circumstances that positions have changed. We didn't hire a superintendent. We had an interim for 1.5 years. So our decision-making on moving forward with what do we do with facilities has been delayed. And now we're having more costs because of that, because we're farther behind. Eventually, hopefully, those costs will be, we will find a savings in changing our facilities in whichever direction we decide to go. But right now, I see a difference between a flat budget and a 0% increase. 0% increase to me is, and I know I'm not a finance person, that means you're not increasing your budget at all. So that means you're cutting in our position because we don't have income in Board of Ed. But a flat increase to me is same services, and that's not what we're going to have if we go with the budget that's proposed to us. We are going to lose many things in many directions, and I'm in favor of a flat budget that keeps what we have to the best that we can, and be fiscally responsible, and perhaps maybe some of the money that we've given back that has gone into the general fund could be, that we generously gave back, could be given to us at this point without raising taxes and until we get to a point where we have made some savings with our facilities, and then we'll be in a different position to be asking for less.
As chair, I try to remain neutral. This is something I feel passionate about, so I think it's only fair for me to express my opinions about what's here. Again, we all have our different thoughts about this. I would have liked to have seen a budget from the superintendent, and I'm not speaking out of school because I said this to you the first time we talked about it. I said, we need to present a budget. The first cut should be what we think provides an excellent education to our students. And that includes the improvements that we think are necessary to do that. We provide a very good education. But we hear from people all the time, well, why don't we provide a second language? Why don't we have science and social studies more often? Why don't we have these clubs, all year round? We hear the improvements from the community that they would like to see added. And we didn't even get those priced out. That was your decision because you were being fiscally responsible. I don't feel that it's a fair starting ground to say that we're starting at 6.9 when we should have been starting at 11 or 15 or 20% because that's what we should be spending. And our job, I think, is to present a budget to the Board of Finance about what we need to do to provide an excellent education for our students. Certainly, the state constitution says that we are required to provide an adequate education. Everybody can discuss what is adequate to you. In my mind, as someone who no longer has children in this district, it should be an excellent education because an investment in an excellent education improves our property values. It's an investment in our town. It's an investment in the community life of this town and builds relationships and is really the core of what we do. Now, other people would argue that adequate should be, just mediocre, or an adequate education should be the cheapest possible we can get away with, especially given the fact that we have to pay for E.O. Smith and we have no control over them. But I don't think that's where our conversation should be. I think this Board of Education should be looking at what should we be doing to provide an excellent education. And I think it's a false choice to say, oh, we have to choose between these two positions, or we have to choose between these two positions and making classroom sizes bigger and cutting classroom teachers. I think that's a false choice. We can choose to vote our conscience and fight for the budget we think Willington kids deserve. I don't think this budget is what Willington kids deserve. I think they deserve a lot more than this. I will settle for this. And if I had an option, I would argue for option B because that's where the one retirement leads us to. So those were the changes that were there. But I think even option C is already a concession too far for me. I really believe that I have to vote my heart, and my heart says a $500,000 increase over what you presented is barely adequate. So I did a back-of-the-envelope calculation, and Erica, I'm right, there's about 2,300 households in Willington, roughly. So if you take that $505,000 increase over what you presented, and you divide it up by the 23,000, I'm sorry, not 23,000, ooh, I made it 10 times bigger. 2,300 households, the cost is $4.22 a week. That's less than a Big Mac. Okay, you know where I eat my lunches, sorry, I should have said 2 coffees and Dunkin' Donuts. But for an investment in our town, an investment in our kids, we're arguing over pennies. We shouldn't be arguing over this, we should be investing 5 Big Macs a week in improving our schools, not just over keeping it flat, but really investing and doing more. So I will vote with whatever option provides the greatest amount of funding to make sure that education is provided. I'm not at all ashamed to say that I would have liked to have seen this be a lot bigger than it was. And I realize that for some people, an increase in taxes creates a hardship. I realize that for some people, coming up with, 4 Big Macs in a month, means they're giving something else up. Other than just their health and cholesterol level. But I think that overall, when we talk about numbers that are big, it seems huge. But in reality, it's not a big investment in our kids. And an investment, if you own property in town, how much do you invest in that property? Do you maintain it regularly? Do you fix the roof when it leaks? Or before it leaks so that you don't destroy the infrastructure underneath it? And we should be thinking about our schools in a way, not just as the infrastructure of the buildings, but the infrastructure of the community that we've built, of the people who are there. If you cut positions, you are cutting not only the person's livelihood, but you're cutting years of experience, you're cutting relationships and processes and work that's gone together to make a smooth running system. So it's not about, can we use this type of librarian or that type of librarian? This is about cutting certified educators who have specialized knowledge and expertise in a system that's working, that could use additional help. So why are we thinking about cutting them at all when we should be adding a math interventionist so that the person who's working on enrichment can focus more on enrichment and not have to do the math intervention? So I realize that all of this is compromise. I recognize that I'm one of 7 of us. We will have to make a decision next week. I would ask you all to think about how you feel about the political process, because if the Board of Finance, after we've made our presentation, comes back with a lower number, we will have to make a decision about whether we will decide to support that budget through the referendum and town meeting process. I would argue that if the number that comes back does not support excellent education in Willington, we should vote that budget down, because it's our responsibility to take care of our kids. Just because they say, 0% or 1%, what's the magic in the number? I'd like to see them tour the schools the way we did, and see the programs, to see the way the enrichment program, to see the way the kids are getting excited about books.
Did they give us any guidelines?
They make a
What was
request,
it?
they make a
3%?
request,
Zero.
they make a request
0%.
for 0%. But that's not based in flat funding the existing
Yeah, but if you
program.
go to the town, I can appreciate what you're saying, but if you go to the town with a 5.9 just on the Board of Education, and then the town comes in with another 3 or 4%, that adds up. It's
Right,
just-
but-
It's not just our budget, but
I
But we're
understand
the
that.
biggest piece.
My point though is that
Right.
we cannot control what the other boards and the other parts of town government do. We're the Board of Education. Our first selectman will come back to them with whatever the budget is. There's also the CIP requests in terms of keeping the infrastructure together. There's a lot of pieces to juggle, I
yeah, but we want
understand.
to provide, when it goes to referendum, we want to make sure that whatever budget you're providing is going to pass.
Why?
But you're saying.
I disagree with
what
you
you're saying is
100%. 100%.
Because if it goes down, you don't know whether it was too much or too little.
I would fight tooth and nail to make sure it was very clear that it went down because it was too little. And part of that's the political process. We would have to talk to parents and to our neighbors and to people who live nearby and to people who live in this town that are taxpayers, and tell them why it helps the value of their house to have an excellent education. Why it's in the best interest of the town and inviting new people to come and move here to have an excellent education that brings people in. So I think that that's part of why I'm making my case now in front of the public that are here and in the various places that are there, because I think this is a chance to make a stand. We have been, for years, super, super frugal. We give money back every year. We are not padding this budget. We are not providing, an excess amount of supplies. We are not being profligate with the taxpayers' dollars. I think we are very good stewards of the money that is provided to us. But I think we have to draw a line in the sand, and a line in the sand is what creates an excellent education. And I think that the options that would match a 0% increase, not only do not provide an excellent education, I think they do great harm, and we would no longer even be able to provide a very good education. So you're right that when a budget happens without any discussion, you don't know why did it fail. What I'm making the case for is if the number is so low that we can't support it, that we would make a case for why we would like to see that budget fail and make it explicitly because it's too low. So that's not an easy thing because, you know, we all have jobs and other things that we do. It would require talking to people and expressing that case, and we don't all have exactly the same agreement. When we vote on this budget next week, I would ask that all of you follow traditional form, that this would be the budget put forward by the Board of Education, and that you would support whatever it is the 7 of us decide together. So that would mean that even if you don't agree on everything that's in there, you do not speak about it at the Board of Finance in the negative. Of course you have your own opinions, and I'm not limiting your right to free speech. But if we're going to come together and make a decision about this budget, I think we need to all be behind it as the Board of Education budget.
I can't agree with that.
I realize
That's
that.
right. It is a limiting of my freedom of speech, of my, hold on.
No, I was at the same workshop that you were at, so I would like to speak after you speak if I can.
Yes, you may.
Because I was sitting right next to you.
You may. You
Absolutely.
don't agree.
Well, I don't agree because I have no right to submit to other members of the board because I represent 631 people who voted for me, so I cannot make them to take your position. So I'm going to be strongly staying on the position which I believe people who put me here they have that position, so I'm going to be holding that position. I cannot agree with you.
I hear what you said. You were at this,
I was at the same exact workshop that she was in for us to become Board of Ed members. It's the CAVE workshop for incoming members.
Okay.
And it was stated, I don't have the paperwork with me because I would have to have all volumes to bring everything that I've gotten so far. It was stated that you can vote your opinion in a vote, but once an opinion has been stated, has been voted on, you are part of the board, and you're not supposed to go to the grocery store and talk about your opinion anymore. You're supposed to put it towards the board. If someone has a problem, you say, this is what was talked about at the meeting, and now you can come to the meeting or speak to the board as a unit about it. Your voice is gone once we vote. You were sitting right next to me, and I can bring you paperwork to show you.
Oh no, I'm not arguing. That's
So
my
you
whole
can
point.
vote.
I'm
But
not
when
gonna
you
be
go
arguing
to the
with
Board of
anybody.
Finance, it's not appropriate for 5 of us to sit on one side of the room and one of us to go to a different side of the room with their party people and then stand up and speak and say, I'm your neighbor and this is how I feel, yet last week the board voted as a unit, this was it. And it would be the same for me if we vote against what I feel. I would have to keep my opinions, my personal opinions down and speak as the board for what we voted. And you can ask, I mean, Erica was on this board for years. She knows, we've all been to the same workshops. So I can show you the paperwork.
I am not arguing with you. My actually position, if you talk about my position, if you did not notice, I am very strongly staying away from arguments. When there is argument,
Didn't
I am
you
not
just
arguing.
say that you don't agree? So let's say we
I
vote
don't
to-
agree with agreeing with you, but it doesn't mean I have to go to the Board of Finance and scream my own opinion. I did not mean that. I just mean,
Okay.
as long as there is a board, and I have a voice on the board, I'm gonna be talking.
You can
But
talk
when it
about
comes, I did not mean that I'm gonna be coming and, making, but when there is, for example, if you started to talk about town meeting, and when the whole town gets together, and you decide to go against the decision of the Board of Finance, I'm not sure about that, I'll have to think about all that position. But as for I do not want to stay to be in the argument. My whole point is this is my opinion, and that's what I'm keeping, that's how I vote, and that's why I vote that way. So, but I do not, No argument. I don't believe there is truth in the argument, the staff truck.
Okay. Herb, you have
Well-
been on this board longer than all of us, longer than possibly all of us combined.
I agree with a lot of what you said. Philosophically, you're up in the clouds somewhere.
Yeah, I did wax
Being
philosophical.
realistic,
Yeah, yes.
being realistic, you have to bring in a budget that's going to pass, hopefully. I mean, all of us would like to see everything in there. I'd like to see a lot of things in there. I haven't even mentioned. I've seen programs go by the wayside over the years, and it's kind of sad. I sit at home, and I said, a lot of the programs that we instituted back in the 50s, for example, are gone. A lot of nice programs and everything. You know, the budget has declined, your almost gone down. There are reasons for it.
Daily science and
But I
social
think any
studies.
budget, I agree with you, in the budget that we provide the Board of Finance with and the people in town with, should be something that we feel is going to provide our youngsters with the type of education that's going to enhance whatever they do after they leave Wellington and go to Smith College and all. We want to make sure that they're prepared. And to do that, you have to have money and you have to have programs, because money is the driving force, really, in what you can do. As far as the once we make a decision, and it looks like it's going to be different than my decision, the chances are that in board, the role and responsibility of the board, really, as much as we'd like to go to a town meeting and speak either against it and so forth, as you mentioned, the board's under the role and responsibility is that everyone supports whatever you come up with, because it's a divergent board. Everyone has different ideas, and a lot of things in here I don't want, someone else doesn't want, it's in there, it's out, and so forth. But whatever we come up with, that's what we get behind and support. How else are you going to get it through the town? I mean, if we can't go to the town and say, the board, this is what we are presenting to you, we hope that you pass it and so forth. But if it's a split board, then it weakens the position of the board.
I think that, to the best of my knowledge, and anybody in the room who knows differently can correct me, but I believe our education budget passes with a very healthy margin every time we go to referendum.
At least in the last 10 years.
At least in the last 10 years.
Oh,
Okay,
sorry,
okay,
that's what I can- that's what I
so
can-
you're right, I don't want to go back decades.
There were
but
times.
There
when
have been
the-
times
the
further
more
back, but for
Well,
the
we
last
have
10
300
years,
It's not like
votes that are
Coventry.
right.
against it, no
Right.
matter what.
Right, and in some towns, you know, they have difficulty passing the budget. That has never been my experience here. I would like to see whatever budget we think would provide an excellent education get put directly to the voter by the Board of Finance. I think it's the least they can do. If they put our number forward and it fails, I will live with whatever comes back. I will then put forward a budget that would be significantly cut. But I think from what we've heard from the community and the letters we've gotten, that this community values education, and this community would give up their Big Mac a week to see these additional cuts reinstated. So I think that the part that I disagree with you about, Herb, is that putting forward a budget that will pass, we're often so afraid of it not passing that we don't put forward a budget that we think is fair.
And the year that we put the teacher retirement in the budget, we had a very large increase. I don't remember the exact number, but it was it as high as
It was
6?
600,000
Well,
extra.
because of the.
Because of that.
That, but it passed, you know, even with that large increase for really no good reason. in
I
my
think
mind.
I would argue that there was enough information shared about the excess increase that had nothing to do with this
Yeah.
board,
Yeah.
was what helped
Helped
such
it
a
to
significant.
pass.
Right, yeah.
There was more than adequate information shared by both sides to make sure they knew the $600,000 wasn't added to the budget from nowhere.
But it still passed, so I think that's,
Okay, I
We
feel,
gave that
I
money,
feel,
we gave that money back.
we did give that money back.
But it
We did give
passed
that money
without
back.
without.
I'm gonna let Mr. Stevens have the last word, if that's okay with everyone, and then we'll adjourn until next week. So, unless we.
said one more thing.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I got you so excited earlier, and then I'm cutting you out.
You've really done a work comment already, but that's up to you.
Oh, yeah, and then we'll do board comment at the end, sorry.
I can say it during work time.
Okay, just kind of, if there's any additional last minute things that people, I'd like to give you a chance to feel closure before we go home. You have to sleep in an hour or two, so.
I have a
Okay.
question.
Okay, a question about. something-
About how we're gonna vote, what's,
Okay, we'll
Yeah,
talk
that's
about
it.
process then, go ahead, Mr. Stevens.
I want to remind you that you have 3 priorities that your dollars are aligned to. And those 3 priorities should be, no matter what your political affiliation is, it should be directly linked to how you're assigning dollars. You know small class size is highly valuable in this district. People want small class size. They've come out in droves. You cut a position there and see what your audience looks like. That has been a board priority. Clubs and extracurricular activities, you have dollars assigned to it. It's a board priority. And the last thing was professional development, to build capacity of our staff. So as you assign dollars and you're making decisions, I don't feel like at this point, once you're at this table, and I'm a first-year superintendent, but I'm gonna say this anyways, you're no longer representing your political party. You are representing 450 students in this district. And, with those 3 goals in mind, small class size, clubs, professional development, that's who you're representing. And so when you make decisions, those are the kids, students that are impacted. And the staff is impacted. And when you make those decisions and you fulfill those priorities, that's where you impact the community. So if you maintain that and you maintain your drive to fulfill those specific areas and you match your dollars to it, it's because you're telling a story to say, these are our priorities. This is what's going to provide a good education. I agree, I'd love to provide excellent, to provide a good education. And, there was a reason today that I shared with you my dreams, my vision of where could we go and how can we make this better. And it's not about how can we make it better within a certain dollar amount. It's just flat out, how can we make it better? And my administrative team knows, I'm always asking the question, and they haven't known me very long as far as the superintendent goes, but I'm always asking, what can we do to make it better? Donna knows, just working with me for 6 months. How can we improve what we're doing? That's where we should be driving, making our decisions. I think it's important.
Question about process before we go to present to speak and then final board comments. Next week at our regular board meeting, on the agenda will be a time for the board vote on the budget. I'll accept a motion from the floor en masse, all of the programs together. So if someone wishes to make one of these options as a motion, they would have to be explicit about what it includes or does not include, so that then we will take any amendments, motions of amendments of I move that we add this or subtract this. And every time we have an amendment, we will vote on that amendment. It either passes or it doesn't. That we'll have an opportunity when we have finished with any possible amendments. We will then vote on whatever the final motion is, with or without whatever amendments passed. So we're not going to do it by program. We learned our lesson. That was way too complicated if we're going to do it as one. It means that the motion process is going to be complicated. So, you're welcome. Okay, present to speak. And as Erica, I will give you pride of location, because you are kind of a member of this board ex officio due to your first selectment.
Well, thank you. So I want to speak to thanking the board for the work you've done. As most of you know, I sat in that seat, and I know how hard it can be to try to be fiscally responsible while putting forth what you believe is the best education for the children in Willington. I am incredibly disappointed to hear a member of the Board of Education repeat how many votes you received, and those are the people that you represent. That is an incorrect statement. Once elected to this board, you represent every citizen in Willington, and especially the children. If I only did my daily work representing the people that voted for me, I would hope that the people in this town would run me out of town in a second. Your work is for the education in Willington, not the 631 adults that elected you. That's my say.
Okay, I saw other hands. Please state your name for the record.
Eric
Eric.
I got
Yeah, okay. I got you sure. Do you still remember what your address is, though?
I do.
Okay.
19 Adamek Road.
Okay, we're set. Next.
Judy Greek, 19 Birchmont Lane. I have a little anecdotal tale from E.O. Smith, it's not bad. I recently had my stepson come live with us from another state with a very different school system. They just went through their cumulative exams, and both my son and my stepson had to do research in advance for an in-class essay, which was their cumulative exam. Matt was very well prepared by the librarian to do research on the internet. He was able to compare and contrast sources for their validity and had no problem finding appropriate and valid sources. When I started working with my stepson, his only point of reference to do research on was YouTube videos, because no one in his school system had ever taught him how to do research. We had to hire a tutor, and actually it's Coach Carly, who's a phenomenal tutor, and we hired her in less than 7 days for midterms, and she got him through and got B's and A's on everything. So we were lucky, but that's a living example of what happens when you don't have somebody doing what the librarian does. I asked my daughter recently, who's now in 7th grade, for you guys who don't know, how did you learn how to do research online? The librarian. I was like, does anybody else in the school ever talk to you on how to do that? No. Like, are you kidding? No. So there's value that I didn't hear discussed when you guys were talking about roles that I just wanted to point out. And then dialing that lens back, what I see you guys arguing over, here's a little math thing, A plus B equals C. You guys are not agreeing what C is. You've got A, your fixed costs, you're trying to figure out what you can do with your variable costs, but you're not agreeing what C is. Some of you are saying C is you have to have a budget issue. It's all about the budget. It's all about dollars. You have to make the Board of Finance happy. You have to come in at a number that's going to pass. You have to come in at 0 added dollars. Then I hear others of you, and I am so grateful for the feedback, that you are talking about value. You are talking about what makes the school system great. You are talking about good education and excellent education and putting our kids first. This is not the Board of Finance. This is the Board of Education. I loved what you said, Michelle. I loved what a lot of you said. This is the Board of Education. I hope going forward you fight for our kids, because they deserve it. They deserve to have the very best that we can possibly give them. We have given back 1.3 million. Ask for those dollars back. You know, you gave it back to them. It's in the general fund. Ask for those dollars back. And if they don't give it back, I'll back you all the way and go in the referendum, and we'll get this town stirred up, because this is fighting for our kids. And it was the increase in health insurance costs that was about the same amount for these two positions. Our kids shouldn't suffer because health insurance went up. They really, really shouldn't. Thank you for listening.
Other hands? Someone's hiding. Okay. Sorry, okay. If there was a hand- I saw you, but I wasn't sure if there was a hand. Okay, because I know I like to have closure before I leave this meeting, because I go home and there's nobody to talk to about it. It helps me to have kind of a closing of where we are. So okay, where did we start last time? Anybody, somebody start, okay, Kiara, you start.
I'll start. I said I wasn't going to say anything, but this was a very good discussion. I appreciate everything that everybody said. Thank you, Herb, for your years of experience and your wisdom. Although, again, I don't necessarily agree with it, but it is very helpful. And to all of you, I really appreciate it. It really, it's a good process because it helps me think, and same with you guys in the audience. It really helps you reflect, and I think we do need a week to kind of reflect about all of this. So,
Thanks. We typically go clockwise, is that okay? Herb?
I want to thank the board for all of the input this evening, and thank the superintendent for his sitting there quietly while all this was going on. And hopefully, as a result of this, we'll be able to come up with a budget that will provide the education that our interests need.
I'm appreciative for the learning experience because I'm new at this. I'm also appreciative of the regulars that come week after week because I feel like I know them now. And it's great to not feel that we're doing this process in a vacuum. So.
Well, first of all, thank you for the additional information, how it was provided with the options and other information we had requested. Thank you for the letters that have come in to the Board of Ed, whatever your opinion, and people coming out to speak. I think just my opinion, because I've heard others say it, we need to remember that we are the Board of Ed and we have to worry about the Board of Ed and not worry about what the other departments are coming in for, because that's the Board of Finance's job, and we can't predict what percentage they're going to come in high or low. So we need to focus on us and not guess. I would hope that the Board of Finance would have confidence in our decision when we do vote, that we are making a decision about what we need, not about what our wants are, but what we need, and to really listen to what we've said and what has been said by parents and people who have come to speak. Because in the past I have seen that we've had many people come out and speak, and then the Board of Finance, we present a budget, or in the past others presented a budget, and all of that was forgotten because of a number that they were looking for rather than what is valued by the town. Again, it's what we need, what we're looking for. And historically, I don't remember in my past, the 23 years I've been here, the budget not passing. Maybe it did once when I didn't have kids and don't remember, but it's when whatever is presented, the people support usually. And I think we should remember that. And I did find notes from that board meeting protocol, and I think it's something to remember. We deliberate in many voices, but we govern as one.
I'm glad we're going forward, possibly going forward with what's best for our kids. And I think we have to remember that it's really what is best for the children. And I hope that we're able to advocate for them in a strong way. And thank you, everybody, for your input. It's nice to know the community is getting involved also.
Well, I just want to clarify that my position is not against children. My position is to give children the best possible education, but not just the best possible, but the best possible we can afford. That's it. I'm happy, very happy. I think we should do all we can to provide the best possible education, but what we can afford, being fiscally responsible. That's it.
I want to thank the folks who come out and provide public opinion. I know there are plenty of other people who can't come out either because they have children at home or are working or have to get up early tomorrow. Those people participate via the virtual links. But for those of you who take the time out and come and sit in the audience and ask questions and give us your opinion, we appreciate you. And we take the fact that folks send us letters and take the time to write to us very seriously. So I think public participation in this process has been very helpful to our process. And I want to thank my other members of the Board of Education. We all have different opinions about where we should land on this. I think that the good thing about living in Wellington is that no matter where we end up, we still are civil with one another and are able to have relationships and get along with one another and move forward, because I really think that there's no one on this board that is not here and donates the hours and time it takes to be on this board if they did not love children. So the fact that you love children brings you to this table, and this is a labor of love because sometimes it's not fun. But I appreciate you letting me wax philosophical earlier, and I'll try to keep that to a limit as much as possible, but I feel like I totally expended all my passion tonight, and I am ready to go home to sleep. So I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second. Okay, and hence we are adjourned at 8:20 p.m. Thank you all.